If you're sitting in doubt, it may be due to disappointment. Maybe disappointment that you've had in the past, or a disappointment that you need to create for others. And I'm not creating a campaign telling you to go out and make sure that people don't get what they expect from you, but I am saying something. I want you to understand that this life will be filled with disappointments, and of the most painful will be those that you do to yourself. And I mean disappointments where you had the idea, you had the instinct, and you stepped away because you just knew that it would not be received or welcomed by the people whose opinions you value most. And so I'm going to talk a bit about disappointment because I think it is something that we try to move away from. As kids, we want to make sure that we do everything to avoid disappointing them. We want to make sure that they meet their goals, and we also want to make sure that promises are kept. But as we grow older, I think we start treating ourselves as the antithesis of that, and we start to make sure that everyone else has their goals met, and then we don't keep promises to ourselves, right? Even the most simple ones. And so I want to encourage you to think about disappointment from a different perspective, and think about doubt from a different perspective, because I think they work very quietly and insidiously, and because of the meaning that we put on them, we approach them differently. So disappointment is often that unmet standard, that thing that you hoped for, maybe prayed for and waited for, and it maybe did not come true. But what if it came in a better form, or if it came through as something that is especially perfect for you? And what if you couldn't see it because you were looking for that mold and that model and that image that you were told to expect, but it comes as something very different and something even more direct? And so I want to talk about disappointment because I think it's something that we're taught to avoid. And I think it's something that even when it does happen, we avoid discussing. I want to talk about it in the sense of disappointment being something that is inevitable because we're working and functioning among humans and working with chance, but also the fact that disappointment will maybe put you in a lower state and change your energy and even make you feel so sad sometimes. And it has its place. It has its function, but before we consider that it is here for a reason, I want us to allow it to be part of the wide spectrum of feelings and emotions that we experience. I think that being the source or cause or part of the catalyst for disappointment for others is maybe something that we avoid more than anything else. And trying to avoid disappointment of others, or breaking or failing to meet their expectations, becomes something that's kind of entrained into you, especially if you're a good student. You're taught to be a good girl, you're taught to be a good worker, a good employee, and then a good adult. All these things are telling you, okay, this is what you're going to do, this is how you play the game, and this is how you meet the expectation. And I want to come and say that you're not going to start your day just brandishing your newfound goal of breaking every expectation, but I want you to think about, what if that expectation was meant for a group, but not for me, right? What if it was meant for other children in the family, but not for me with my skills, interests, and talents? And how would you find those if you were just kind of trying to fit into a mold that doesn't fit you? And so they broke the mold when they made you. And some of this is what's going to cause disappointment, because anything that's broken is kind of looked at with sadness, looked at as a sense of loss. But after we navigate past that point, what can we do to acknowledge that, wow, there might be something beautiful in the brokenness? Wow, kind of like the Japanese art that we mend broken vase with gold, and we make a whole new different piece of art. I wonder what we could create if we looked at our experiences and our life's compartments as a vase, and broken or not, we can choose if we were to mend it and to use gold and to bring it back as something even more beautiful than we imagined before. And so our idea of what is whole, what is acceptable, what is art, what is the ideal, those are going to continue to change. And I want you to consider that if you are disappointing, even in the smallest levels, This may be something that is very hard to take, hard to tolerate at first, but I think your ability to disappoint may match your ability to manage chance and to manage risk. And so maybe it might be something that you have to grow and raise your ability and raise your tolerance for, kind of like anything else. So I want to take this time to just talk about how I think I have disappointed myself in many instances, whether it's having conversations with people that you did not need to continue in, right? People getting in your private business, asking clearly intrusive questions, being even abusive because they think that their level of power that they hold or the some sort of role that it hold gives them this access, right? And being able to speak to that individual and to let them know, I appreciate that you are this person with these goals. And I also know that you don't get to speak to me like that. You don't get to ask me those questions with the expectation that I'll automatically just disperse all my private business, right? So think about disappointment as a way of even self-protection and self-advocacy. You don't have to look at it as a way that you want to go forth and disrespect the status quo. But sometimes I think, especially as women, we have to let people be reminded that we have autonomy, we have self-respect, and that their interactions with us ought to come from a place of inquiry and curiosity than a place of condemnation and criticism. And so if they can make that change, they get to continue the conversation with you. If they can't embrace that, then, maybe that's where we call for a diplomatic end of international talks, and we put a pause on that conversation, and we maybe even put a period on it. So disappointment can take various forms. Another thing that I think we ought to disappoint with is our people expecting pleasantries and deferential behavior, deferential treatment from women, but not just women, just anyone who they consider to be in a position of alternate power or lower, different power level in the power structure, spoken and unspoken. And so asking you, like, where did you come from? Now, where are you really from? Like, what did you do? Like, what does your family do? What do your parents do? And we all know these are placement questions, trying to assess, well, how exactly are you deserving of respect, and how much respect do I assign to you, and will you be useful to me, and do you deserve my extra attention and caution, right? Or do I just treat you like a throwaway? And so you have to decide how you want to interact with and entertain these questions. And even if you're in a position of privilege, I encourage you to delay your response to these questions, because I think people go around and they create this habit where they are really, really being intrusive, but because it's become so common and so easy, and no one has really checked them or pushed back on their intrusiveness, often because of their role or whatever other status yielding characteristics they have. They just go around kind of free willy, just asking people's business. So know how to push back, know how to put a pause or a period on some of these conversations. And then another way I think it's really good to disappoint is to really give people every opportunity to play into the stereotype that's in their mind, while you hold to what your values and what your desires are. People love to take the short road to a conclusion, and sometimes that means that they use information that may be ill-gotten or even just taken from illegitimate resources, and they use that to draw a conclusion about you. And you do not have to spend all your days and all your waking minutes defending anything. But also, it's helpful to be aware that these people, for whatever reason, have gathered or agreed with information that has come to them, and they've done so without verifying. And so that gives you some information about them, kind of like their natural leanings. But it also, I think, gives you a break, because I used to be of the mindset that if somebody automatically believes this about me, then I really need to make sure that they have a counterexample and that they're not in the wrong way believing things that are not true. And I think maybe as I grow more as an individual, I'm realizing they are doing what comes most naturally and most easily to them. And humans are drawn often back to the paths of least resistance. So their paths of least resistance are telling them to expect X of me, to see Y in me, and to conclude C about me, then I don't know that I have that energy anymore to kind of push back against those stereotypes. And I think the lived experience will show you that sometimes all people have about you are some clips and some media displays that they've gotten from TV, from movies. And they use that to put you into a hole and put you into a position that can affect things that run the rest of your life. It may even ruin dreams and ruin some of your most prized exploration and opportunities. And I think that while it's a loss for you, it's a loss for them, it's a loss for organizations, it's a loss for countries, it's a loss for communities. And we don't take the time to count that. But instead of counting that loss, I want you to acknowledge how that disappointment in an individual who didn't take the time to do their due diligence is an opportunity for you to turn around doubt. Because I think if you're being rerouted from something that you really, really desired, right? A friend of mine from college did all the pre-ready requirements, took the MCAT, got admitted to a top medical school, had gone through all the steps to matriculate, and then the institution did not take care of one last step. So this person did years of work, years of preparation, met the standards, passed the requirements, and in the end, they did not have what they earned. And this person said, well, if they're not going to take care of me even before I'm a student there, and they're not going to do what is part of their agreement to do, why would I entrust them with these years for my education? I'll just go and do something else. And all these years later, I'm realizing just how plainly courageous, but how consistently and clearly self-possessed this person was and is, right? I've requested and required this of you. I've met the requirements that you made for me. It sounds like I'm keeping my part of the deal, and you refuse to keep yours. So how do I know that going forward into the future that you won't do the same, that you won't behave the same, that you won't show the same consequences? And this is the next part of disappointment. When it comes to you and disappointments land on your lap, you may have to address them in a draconian, drastic fashion, right? You may have to cut those relationships. You may have to cut those agreements, because while we don't want to make drastic and sudden decisions, it's telling that some people just aren't able to keep their words, or some organizations made commitments that, people dropped the ball, and so some of their staff might not have been able to follow through. And it might be a predictor, like an early sign of what you might experience there, right? So by disappointing them after they disappoint you, you may be saving yourself from some stress and duress. I don't even want to begin to talk about if you put yourself in a position where you move to be in their state, you move to be in their city, you've given up kind of and untied all your tethers elsewhere so that you could commit and tie yourself to them. And when you get there, the things that were promised are non-existent, right? So you have to beware of the signs, not from a place of paranoia, but a place of being able to predict how behavior will be consistent over time. So if you see the signs early and you see people kind of backing out or falling short or forgetting something, and they're late on this, and there's no clear explanation or even indication of remorse, they kind of say matter of factly, oh, we didn't do that. Oh, we didn't do that. Oh, this wasn't completed. Then start to ask yourself, what is this telling me, and what are they showing me without necessarily being aware that they're showing me? So disappointment is never something that we start the process endeavoring to achieve, but it happens. It's part of life. And so when you have those disappointments, I want you to take the time to think about what meaning you're going to attach to them. And then when you have to disappoint others because they've created a situation or created circumstances that do not serve you and will not allow you to even make it to the next stage or next chapter of your book, what are you going to do? How will you approach this? How will you take all this information in and turn it into something that is going to be worthwhile, not just for you, but for your people around you and your loved ones? So I want you to look doubt in the face, look disappointment in the eyes, and know that they may both come at you. But the more conscious and aware you are of both, and the more you are able to use both as tools and use them as information rather than points of desperation, I think the better you'll become and better prepared you'll be for this life. Disappointment is something that we do not endeavor towards, we do not aspire towards. But oh my, when you're disappointed, the doors that may open after you walk past doubt. There's something to be said for disappointment and doubt. So I want you to think about it. How can you transcend the experience? How can you push past the hurt or the delay or the confusion that disappointment can bring? And how can you use it to your benefit if for some reason circumstances have changed and they've put you in a position where you have no choice but to disappoint because they didn't hold up their end of the bargain and the circumstances no longer serve your goal or theirs? Okay, so these can be early predictors of things that'll be even bigger. They go back on small promises. They might go back on bigger, more expensive, more impactful promises in the future. So as you pay attention and move forward, give yourself the benefit of the doubt, right? As you kind of waver back and forth and make your decision, but also realize when people no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt and that you are recoiling or reacting because of your own doubt and your fear of disappointing others. All right. So come on, I want to join your journey and talk about how you're going to pivot. Let's schedule a time to talk. I'm Kai, and I advise people on their shift. All right, talk soon.